appreciate you guys. Let's try one more time. We'll start from fresh.
Go ahead.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Welcome to another episode of Dentment podcast. Appreciate everyone joining. Thank you very much. We have another session here with us. Of course, myself and Dr. Milad is with us as well. Of course, we've got Masood with us, Sina with us as well, the two founders of Allo AI. And we have the second session with Mr. Craig Iott. Welcome.
Hey, we made it. We're back.
Welcome, Craig.
Yes,
we're back.
Special time for the first round. How to do a second.
We had a lot of fun ones, and why not? Let's keep the fun going. So,
yeah,
excellent. Actually, let's start one more time for those that haven't seen the last episode, last session. Let's do one round in terms of Craig. If you want to quickly do a quick bio for yourself, I could try, but
yeah, sure. That's an honor. So I have a background of working in operations and organizational leadership over the last 5 years professionally, full-time as a consultant, about 10 years in my career, and about 3-ish years in dental. Coming up, right around 3 years in dental. And so I specialize in professional communication, organizational development, operations, and that's the general summary here. So I've been working as a fraction leader in the space for a couple of different organizations. Got new consulting with a number of different anything from individuals, practices, DSOs, people that were surgeons, oral surgeons. So I've gotten to have a great time learning about dental and hanging out with people in dental, and I've come to grow to love it.
Fantastic. That's great. So now that we're all caught up, following along, I know we asked quite a few questions last time that we gathered, but there's a lot of follow-up questions that came up. So the conversation came up in terms of when you hire someone, when you're looking to onboard somebody into your team, into your organization, small, big. What should that onboarding actually look like to ensure you're setting up the team and the person for success?
Yeah, I feel like most people do onboarding really poorly. And a lot of it comes out of a place of urgency, not importance. So I think whenever people hire out of urgency, you tend to hire people into a really poor environment straight out of the bat. So what does that look like? It looks like, hey, I'm missing an office manager. Everything's going to crap. People are doing the job that aren't supposed to be doing that. They don't know what's going on. There's no one there to train them, but I just need someone now. Let's say I, as the leader in the practice, I'm just running around like a chicken with my head cut off. This isn't my specialization. I get someone, I toss them in, and it's sink or swim. And that's the context for how most people get hired, right? Is through a sense of urgency. I have this need, someone quit, someone's leaving, I have to solve this right now. And what that makes is you have people that either do a really great job, they're already really capable, they just automatically fit in if you get lucky. But if not, then you usually have a really painful experience. Someone doesn't do something that you expect, and then you get frustrated with them, or they expect it to be a certain way and it's not. So onboarding should look like a very well documented set of expectations, a reasonable timeline from when they begin of what they can actually do. So if you hire someone and they're not going to have the training to do something effectively, of course, they're not going to do a good job at it. So why think that day one, they're going to be able to do all the things the previous person did? That's not reasonable. So to actually have a reasonable timeline based on the type of work and the time to train the work. So if you can't train them, if you don't have time to train them, then that extends out. And every role in every organization, you basically have a asymptotic line, and you have this point of when this person gives more back in returns than they take in salary based on productivity. So your ability to onboard them efficiently accelerates that timeline. Maybe instead of it takes 6 months for them to really be productive and produce as much as they take, maybe it's 4 months. And in a larger organization or over years, that's significant. I think most people, when they get onboarded, need everything that they should be learning should be cut up into 3 sections of learning. First, I'll do first this way. Teach. This is a transfer of information. When you're onboarding someone, you're explaining things to them and telling things to them. Maybe this comes across as modules. Maybe this is someone literally physically telling someone this is how this thing works. 2 is modeling. And no one does this. No one freaking does this at all. Modeling is me doing the thing and you watching. I'm doing it, you're watching me do it, and we do it together. So most people just teach when they're onboarding, skip modeling, and then the third thing, which is coaching. And that's you're doing it and I am giving you great feedback. So in the onboarding process, you have people that get handed a ton of information, huge information dump at best. There's all the information there. They go and do a bunch of stuff on their own. And then you come back and say, this isn't how I wanted you to do it. And that's how most organizations do it, which is really unfortunate. And that gap of modeling, of me walking through it with you. So what do you do if you don't have someone there that knows how to do it? What do you do? Well, you probably should consider recording videos or having some kind of YouTube set, like you do something to prepare some form of modeling, even if you're not going to be there, of physically showing them what it looks like. If not, I would say the next best thing is you pay someone else to do the modeling. Hey, I'm just going to pay this person for a week or a couple of days or one day to show them how the system works. So they do it the right way from day one. And that will save an infinite amount of frustration in the future. I think those are the biggest pieces of when someone gets onboarded to do it well.
Yeah, correct. It's so amazing you mentioned that. Sorry, Hussein.
Go for it.
Just to kind of talk about that whole modeling thing. When I was in dental school, there's so many students, under one roof. So what they used to do is, like you mentioned, they used to just record all these videos that would say, okay, like this is how you, for example, you want to do this injection in this particular area. They would record how to do it, and then essentially they'll show you, okay, this is how you do it, but then you go back on the video and review that all over and over and over again until it almost becomes a second language. So they used to do that in dental school, and that's exactly the modeling part that you're talking about.
Yep. That's actually the greater part of any form of medical school. That's what takes so long, is modeling.
Yeah.
So the more technical a profession is, the more modeling required. The less that just transferring information is helpful.
For sure.
So I would say that's true of every role, every single role. What were you going to say, Hussein?
I was going to say, I worked at this company called IT Glue, and the platform that we were selling, or we're producing and selling, was a documentation platform. So when you said document, and one of the things we discovered going from a group of 7 to 11 to 30, company of 60, and then we became 100, it became an extreme challenge to onboard people, to get new team members onto the company. And exactly what you said is what we were doing. First, we were teaching people, and then the training part. And second was that modeling piece. And then finally, it was the coaching piece. And we could bring on a new support person, someone brand new to the tier 1 support. Within a matter of 4 weeks, they were answering tickets and able to resolve.
That's modeling, right?
Exactly. And it had to do with, we first set it up exactly like you said. Initially, we had these knowledge-based articles, these things that we had documented to actually tell the person, this is how you solve these multiple. 70% of the knowledge is right there. You read it, you do it. And then eventually you would model them. They would sit there and they would shadow you for a whole entire week. Yep. And it'd be tiring, but they would just sit there and watch and learn and watch and learn. And then eventually we had these videos and academies, beautiful academy that had a whole bunch of videos that were created and a whole bunch of documents that were created. Super easy, simple, straightforward. And eventually you would get to the coaching piece by the 4th week or the 5th week. And that just continues on from the senior members. But it was a very successful formula to onboard these techs and these new team members. No, it's a very, very good point. Very, very good point.
Yeah, I think. Oh, good.
No. I just had a quick question. You can go after.
Yeah, go for it. You may want to scoot a little closer to the mic though, just so you know when you're in.
Oh, okay. Uh, Something that I've been having challenge with, like myself during onboarding, is when you're working in a specific industry, just, say dental or insurance or whatever. If you bring someone that has expertise within that industry, then the onboarding process is probably going to be easy. Like for instance, for us, we were working in dental, and then Mila joined, and the onboarding was super easy because he had subject matter expertise. Like he was fully familiar with the whole industry. But when you try to bring in experts from other industries that, for instance, they were doing tech or they were doing sales or they were doing, I don't know, like support, but in a different industry.
Yep.
This is something that actually I think Hossein went through. Like he was in the MSP industry, and then with basically what we built here, he was now in dental industry. What should that kind of like onboarding look like, and the documenting that you're doing, and basically the content that you're making, how should it be different? Because I myself, like from experience, I found it very challenging to basically familiarize people with this kind of new industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, does that make sense?
It does. So it's something that we deal with too, and I do fractional leadership over with Sarah at our Thrive Tribe. We deal with the same thing. We get people that do marketing management, right? And a lot of them are not coming from dental background. Some are, but maybe not as much, or maybe even dental, but not DSO, which is a little bit different. So it's different. Everything is different. A lot of what we find is same thing, kind of the modeling, but we sometimes do something even we call the TMZ, where Sarah will make a 5 to 10 minute video where she's just talking about not the gossip, but conceptual gossip of the industry to get people familiarized with the players, the terms, the acronyms, the vernacular. And it's just something where it's a perpetual dump of vernacular on someone until they've heard it enough times it becomes familiar. Because the hardest thing to extricate out of a person is the vernacular. The hardest thing to get someone to go, hey, this jargon, this is the jargon we use here. And if you want to seem attached, like the jargon of accounting, the jargon of leadership, the jargon of tech, right? And I think trying to get someone in that jargon is what's most challenging right away. I would say though, there's a time I created an institute for a really large nonprofit, and one of the things that we focused on up front that I think is really important it was called cross-functional development. And that's this idea where I want someone to maybe not be an expert at someone else's job, but I want them to be familiar with their process, their language, how their world works, so that when they interact and engage with them, there's less frustration. Like, hey, I know, for instance, like Masood or Hossein, Sina, you guys are familiar with waterfall and agile concepts for development, correct?
Yep.
Well, for instance, for me, and for people that aren't sure what I'm talking about, Hossein, could you explain the difference between waterfall and agile methodology?
Can you firstly explain what waterfall methodology is? I've heard of agile, but not waterfall.
Hossein?
Do you want to go? So waterfall concept is when you have, agile is when you're basically working in sprints.
Yep.
And waterfall is when you have the concepts that are, you just move them from one silo to the next silo to the next silo to the next silo from what I understand. Am I right? Am I wrong?
That's the broadest part. The thing that gets interesting with it, and that's exactly it. The thing that's interesting is the methodology of implementation of projects on whether it is assumed that we'll have delays or certain things will go faster and it's adaptive, or hey, it's a fixed timeline and everything has to crush into this timeline. So an agile methodology assumes that projects never go as planned and that there will be adjustments. Maybe the scope will change. Maybe the sprint length will have to change. Maybe the end timeline or the cost will have to adjust. Waterfall is not. Waterfall is a fixed budget, fixed timeline, silo to silo. This is just how it has to work. So those are two concepts almost exclusively in tech. However, I think they're super relevant for any business planning any kind of project implementation, right? So let's say you're even buying and let's say you're getting, Dr. Oji, let's say you're picking up a second practice, right? You're a dentist, you're crushing, I'm going to do one more practice. Believe it or not, no matter what you want to call it, it's a project from end to end that has a lot of smaller components and that you either are approaching it without realizing it with a waterfall method or an agile method. That is how you're doing it. Now, the specifics, obviously Agile gets really, really specific and really technical, but generally that's the same. It's the same. It's how you manage a project. And I think that's useful for anyone. ERP implementation, if you're doing practice management software implementation, it's all the same. So cross-functional knowledge is really useful. So I would say when you're hiring someone from outside of the space, a lot of people see it as a handicap. My question would be, how do you leverage the knowledge from the industry, the vernacular, the jargon, the methodologies that they're coming from, and you implement it well in your space? How do you bring it in and use it to adapt into dental? Like something I don't tell people about often, like I have a partner in a long-term project. He worked at NASA and Raytheon. He teaches literally systems engineering for NASA to people there and at a university and stuff. Worked on all sorts of crazy stuff like invented microsatellites and crap. So I've learned a lot about a systems engineering approach to business. And I use that a lot with people without them knowing that's what it is. And it's from aerospace. It has nothing to do with the technical industry that I'm in. Super useful. People always think it's super great. Systems architecture, systems engineering, people love it, that methodology. So I don't think it's a bad thing to be from not dental. I think it's a bad thing to not adapt into the new industry and to not carry over what you already knew.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very, very solid point. And you're kind of right, because so many of the concepts that I work on, like I used to work on every day in the tech world that I was in, actually translate into dental. And so many of the learnings that I have, whenever I get into a problem here, like I just try to see how I was handling the problems there. And then literally the same methodology works here. And I never noticed it. I just did.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Doctor, you have the strongest opinion here since you're the dentist, but you even yourself, I mean, I don't know if everyone knows your background either. You have a mixed background in terms of industry, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I did sales before dental school. I did my major in business. I've been all over the place before I got to dental school. So absolutely, yeah, my background is completely different. I mean, even now, like some of the things that I do on a day-to-day, it's like even some of the things, how to deal with people, how to deal with patients. And sometimes I even go back to like my days before dental school and just say, oh man, I did this to get out of this situation, and I use the exact same thing. And sometimes it helps, and those experiences help to get you out of a certain situation. So it definitely, like, I feel like in the business, no matter what it is, everything is so related to one another. It's just a matter of how you apply it.
Yep, application. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Excellent. I kind of following along that same idea is, you're teaching people, you're modeling for them, you're getting them to shadow you, and then finally you're coaching them. But similar along that line of questioning or conversation is, should people that you're onboarding into a new team, let's say into a new dental office in this example, should you be training them on their role, or should they be cross-functionally trained? Is there a benefit? Should you keep them? And this could apply, essentially, it applies to a lot of different industries.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts there, Craig? What do you think?
I think every leader feels at some point if their team is too siloed. And they'll go, oh man, this person's gone. I wish this person knew something about this, or how to access this, or what to do with it, or how to get into it, or could help train the next person a little bit. I think any leader that doesn't do any cross-functional training at all, within a certain, I mean, there has to be a certain range of skill sets, right? You can't do everything across, but I think you always regret it when you need it. To me, it's short-sighted. It's really short-sighted to not do it. Like if you have no crossover at all, it's short-sighted. Like people will leave. I hate to tell, like, I think most people like the idea of lifers. Like, hey, every person that joins my business is a lifer. And then when they're not, you're like, what do I do now? Like the person left. Like this vacuum has come into my business and there's nothing to fill it. And I think having people that, with the assumption that everyone at some point could move on, I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy for people to know how other systems work. Even if they're not the expert at it, they can at least open the door and help someone walk through it.
And quick question there. What should your expectation be when your company's earliest stage, because when it's earliest stage, like you don't have people doing just one thing in a day. Like
Correct.
you expect them to do different things, like different sort of things, and things that they didn't have experience with before. So you expect them to learn, to basically
Yeah.
onboard themselves onto that, and then execute it
Yep.
successfully, not just something that they waste time. How would you go about that? Like, isn't it confusing what I mean? Because I'm sure many people have gone through that, especially people that founded companies. Like, they've been through it and they handled it. So what's the process like? I don't think there's a secret, like there's a special sauce to it. Everyone does it differently.
Well, I'll
But
show you the sauce. I'll show you the secret sauce right here. You know what I'm saying?
looks spicy.
It's protein drink. I think it's actually the secret, if there was one, is in the type of person you hire. So there's this concept called the thinking wavelength. I love this. All right. The thinking wavelength is a tool that helps evaluate where people fall in terms of a desire for repetition, uh, no change. I want to know what I'm doing every single day when I go in, all the way over to the extreme of I need fresh meat every day. I got to do something different. I either need to be starting a business or ingesting some new concepts or learning, etc. And I think where you hire between these 6 different tiers on this for how much risk someone wants to handle, that is all the difference in the world when you're a startup. You have to hire people that have a greater appetite for risk, for change, for variability. And those are the people that if you're not giving them new things to learn and do, they're frustrated. They're bored. If you want someone to come in, be a hyper expert, super like, hey, I got the horse binders on, I want to do this one thing really well, they're going to fail in a startup context anyway. So the biggest thing is, who are you hiring? What motivates them? Is it the chase? Great. And oftentimes, and I hate to say this too, the people that are really those, I call them wall builders. They're the people who are going to help build the walls of your city when you first start. Scaffolding, you could even say. They're going to leave. They're going to leave in 2 to 3 years because that's what they do. They find new things to do. And they're going to do it until it starts to stabilize. And once it stabilizes, they're no longer the person because they kind of start messing. Instead of being helpful, they start messing stuff up because of change. They change too much, and then they're like screwing things up. You're like, all right, go over there, right? Stop changing stuff. And then they eventually move on. And that's usually how that works.
And what do you think are the different styles of leadership as you're growing from an early stage startup all the way to a corporate business? You know, it goes from general to more specific. Even as the main person, like you yourself, at first you need to put on many hats. But the more you go on, the more you carry on, and the more that you develop the company, the more specialized your own work gets, just like every other person in that company. What are the different stages of that kind of growth or like leadership?
I think leadership has to see themselves differently, and they have to become a different person in their own minds throughout the process. So one of the things I commonly tell people is you will hit different tranches in your business, revenue, size, employees, and you'll get stuck. And here's what I usually tell leaders. You need to fire yourself. I need you to go out to your car. You're fired. You are fired from this role. You're going to go sit in your car. You're going to drive around the block, and you're going to come back. And when you come back, you're going to come inside, and you're going to have all the resources that you have. You're going to have all the knowledge you currently have. You're going to have all the experience you have, and you can do whatever you want with your new business. You're the new CEO. What are you going to do? And you have to change the framework of approach from how you've done it up until this point, because there's this general like chart you could follow that says every 25 to 30% growth a business has, your systems will probably have to adapt the growth. If you don't, eventually it'll break. Now, there's different types of businesses, and that breaks at different points. But it's inevitable that at a certain percentage of change, your scale, the systems you're using to scale are not going to work, and you have to change them. So when you start as a leader, it usually looks like personal, like, hey, it's you and me, and we're close, and you're following me because of who I am and our relationship. And as your business begins to grow and scale a little bit, it goes, hey, you're following not just me, but we're following the vision and where this thing can go. And I need you to chase that on your own with me versus just following me chasing it. And instead of having to be in everything, you putting your hands in everything because whatever you're touching needs to grow. It's like, hey, I need to take my hands off everything and it needs to grow without me. And so then I need to put someone in place who does not require much of me to put their hands on it and make it grow. And that transition is also very hard for leaders, to go from having their hands at everything and everything and everything and to going, hey, I need to let go of this thing and it needs to grow without me. And I need to go cast the vision of where it's headed versus forcing it to come up. And that's a super big transition. It's more analytical. It's more macro decision based, right? It's making bigger picture decisions every day than smaller picture decisions. And I think as a leader, you have to then decide what kind of people work well with your leadership style. And this is why not every leader is meant to be a visionary. Back to that thinking wavelength. Not every person can transverse all of those different categories. It can be very challenging. So you have to partner with the right people from the start, or you have to know that, hey, I'm going to need someone else as soon as this happens to come in this spot and fill this role because I'm not that person. I'm not wired to do that. And so I think as you hire people, the biggest question should always be, who do I work well with? So for me personally, right, I do not work well with people that need a lot of specific direction. I do not function well with them. I'm not a detail-oriented person. I'm a big picture person. And so if you can't track with me and if you can't go and autonomously make decisions and like if you don't assume some power and authority and would rather ask for forgiveness than permission, I don't want someone that's gonna ask for permission for everything. I don't freaking want you to ask me again. Like, go do it. Like, stop asking me. As a matter of fact, go spend the money and tell me you spent it. And then if I yell at you, that's fine, right? Like, I'm not gonna be mad. Like, go do whatever you got to do and figure it out. I'd rather that than you coming to me all the time. And so I need to then, if I don't hire someone like that, that's my fault because I know that. I know that that's the type of person I work well with. And so it's my fault if I don't get them. And you have to know yourself well enough to know who you can work with and who's going to really irritate you. And then it's going to be a better relationship for you both.
That's a very good point, Craig. And that's actually something that me and Sino were talking about the other day is basically the art of business is the art of delegation. Because if you're creating a business and a company that you're always attached to it and it cannot function without you, you basically just made yourself a high-wage job, like a high-paying job. Like it's really not a business. And that I think brings us to the idea of true leadership, which we talked about in the last podcast, that a true leader makes good leaders so that later on he can basically just offset the work to them. And then he doesn't have to work on the same things that he was working on. Just like the example of basically, a person just like Mila that's going to acquire clinics. At first he has to control that clinic, but later on he leaves that job to office managers. And then there's a hierarchy of different leaders that has to be built.
Yeah.
But the one thing is, as you're building this team, as you're building this hierarchy, how do you build the confidence and how do you basically, it's not just about confidence, but you're basically building a family that they need to believe in they gotta believe in the same visions and the same path that you're going so that they can execute as well as you do. How do you build that confidence and the right attributes in them?
Yeah, and I think this is something that I'm really super passionate about. Everyday life, I think this is something that's game changing. Anyone that ever watches this, like this may be the single most important thing you take away from this for you. I don't care what position you have or what role you will have in a business. If you're a human being, this is really important. Confidence comes from the same idea or word of confide, right? Like to trust in someone else. Confidant, a person you trust in. Confidence is the idea of self-trust. Your confidence is your self-trust. It is your belief that I can take on whatever this thing is, and then I trust myself enough to work it out. So how do you instill self-confidence in someone else? Well, you instill trust in them. You give them tasks that they actually can succeed in doing so that they see themselves as the type of person that succeeds and will take on the next task, assuming they'll succeed in that too. And you make them more complex and larger over time. And as you do that, you will build the confidence and self-confidence in a teammate. That's how you do it.
And what other things do you think, like what other attributes or I would say characteristics do you think you should be building in them besides just the confidence?
What other characteristics should you be building? That's a good question. One thing I like to do a lot is force people to understand why, not what. So get people to be critically thinking around their role. So it's like, hey, that didn't work. So instead of going to them and telling what to do next, it's even more important to me for someone to understand why something doesn't work than to know what to do next. Because I think it's very challenging to creatively do problem solving without truly understanding what works and what doesn't work. So I'd rather ask someone a million questions in a dialectic to force that line of reasoning over and over and over and over again. And so when something doesn't work out or something goes different than expected, their first thought isn't, oh no, what do I do now? It's, let me look at everything that just happened. Let me think through all these things. Let me understand. And if you can get someone to start with wanting to understand, they're going to be a way more valuable asset on your team.
There's a little bit of Simon Sinek there. Start with the why. It's kind of like going back to the why, right? That's very cool. It's definitely very cool.
Yeah. Have you seen how has that looked for you guys in your organizations? Do you feel like it's been a challenge to build confidence in your teammates, to get them to see things from your perspective? How has it looked for you?
Hussein, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Go for it, buddy.
Especially when you have an idea and you are seeing it from one perspective, you have a set of expertise that you're seeing it from one way, and then you have to find other teammates that have other types of expertise. And then you cannot basically force the way you're seeing it on them and expect them to follow the same thing as you do. Like, does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like, for instance, for me, I came from a tech background. And then when we were building this company, I was seeing it from a tech perspective. And I was thinking, okay, this would be a great idea. This would be a great thing to sell. But then I met Hossein. And Hossein, he was in the tech world, but his expertise was in customer experience and sales engineering and those sorts of things. So I couldn't talk to him in the tech language. Like, I had to basically transfer that knowledge in a different way for him to build that confidence in him, in the platform that we're building and the company that we are basically growing. So,
I'm sorry, Masood. What's the name of your company?
Iott.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just keep saying company. I'm like, what company? Plug it in, man. Plug it in.
Absolutely. No, the reason I don't mention Iott all the time is because right now, like, we have one solution that is like, so far it's been fantastic, but we're really trying to make a change in the whole dentistry. So, that's why I just say Iott. It's just going to be, we're trying to basically leave a good impact in the whole dental market. So anyways, going back to the point, like, I found it very challenging, and somehow, I don't know if I did a good job or not. Hossein, did I do a good job?
Did you do a good
job? Let me think. No, he has. To be honest, it's actually really great for a dynamic, to be frank. But yeah, I would say yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I don't have a secret sauce. I don't know how it happened, and if it happens again, like if I'm in a different company and then I'm put at the same role, how I'm going to do it. But I think there is no secret sauce, as I said. Like, there are so many variables that you cannot sort of basically a specific function or equation that say every time you follow this, you're just going to get to the same results. And sometimes you might fail. I think it's very important that when you are building a company, especially an early stage company, for people to buy you as a person, to know that basically this person is going to grow. So I'm just going to grow with him. Like, you see what I mean? So it's not just about selling the vision of the company, but selling the vision of yourself to show those people that you are a high quality person. And that as you keep going, that as the time passes by, you're just going to become better and better. So this is a train that's going. Do you want to hop on, or do you just want to stay there? I don't know if that makes sense, though.
Yeah. So Masood, Hossein, I think one thing, and Sina, you can chime in too here. Why would people follow you? Like, what are the characteristics of being a leader that you've seen that you're like, man, this is what's important. This is what I want to show to the world. And this is why I think people should be a part of what we're doing. For all those other leaders out there that are thinking through, like, what does that look like in real life?
Hossein, do you want to go this part? I think you would have a better answer to this than me.
Oh, man. One, you would have to be a good visionary. you have to provide a very clear idea on where the team is headed, where the organization is headed, where the business is headed. That's where it starts. I think the second, possibly as close to that, communication. Being able to share your vision effectively and efficiently, and make sure that your information that you have that needs to be shared across, and the emotions need to be effectively shared and communicated with the team members.
Talk about that a little more, because that's really good. I don't think most people know about. Most people understand.
Yeah, we often assume that people can visually see inside of our head. Hey, I want this to happen, and you just leave it at that. A lot of leaders don't get that they need to explain that vision and essentially what you said, which is the why behind it. And if you effectively communicate that, this is what we're looking for, and then you guys can kind of figure out, the rest of the team can figure out how we're going to actually get there, great. But if you don't explain that vision, if you don't share that idea, if you don't effectively try and say, hey, for example, at Nike, we want to sell these particular lines of clothing. Here's why we want to sell them.
Yeah.
But the how, the rest of the team can figure out. You're the product expert. You're the engineer person. You're the whatever. You guys figure out the how. But this is what we need. As close to the truth as you could possibly communicate is going to be the more successful case. Yeah.
I love that. Masood, do you want to add in any? Have you, how do you rally the troops? Do you have a battle cry? Do you just get up in the morning and get on a team call and go, listen up? Like, how does it work for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, I'm going to basically ask this question from Iott, because he's the very last person that came into our company and basically our mission, and he believed in us. So why did you do that, Iott? I mean, and be super, it's okay. Like, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, for sure. I think the one thing that was like super, like, as far as like where I was at the time when I kind of started talking to Masood, the one thing that I enjoyed about my conversation with him was that his path to what he was trying to solve was super clear. Like, there was no pause in between. There was no like bumps along the ways. It was just like, hey, I saw the problem. I'm trying to solve it. And his vision was so clear, which is a lot of time you find that so difficult in certain things. Like, I talk to some people and they know what the problem is, but they don't have the good solution to it. And they're just trying to fix it here, there. But like, their vision was super clear to like what they were trying to resolve. And also as a practitioner, as somebody that practices day to day, I actually saw the problem firsthand, and I knew that what they're trying to solve was something that I dealt with personally on a day-to-day basis. So I'm like, knowing that, like me getting in the office Monday morning and I'm sitting there talking to the staff, I'm like, guys, we have 100 voicemails. Please, somebody respond to these voicemails. And I'm like, the fact of the matter is that I'm like, wow, Allo AI, they can do all of these things. They can, have somebody when I'm not in the office. They can make an appointment when I'm not here. They can do all of these things. So just like knowing that problem exists and their vision was super clear, that just made me like trust their product so much more, and also trust Masood as a leader so much more. Yeah. And then when I saw a good looking guy like Hossein, I was like, I'm done. I'm sold.
Oh yeah. I just, for me, for Hossein, it was the Abercrombie and Fitch. I kept seeing him in the stores, and I finally saw him in real life, and that blew my mind. But that's really compelling. And Masood, I think that's I think a gift is clarity. Clarity is a gift, and not a lot of people have it. And I think every business visionary, their job is to create clear direction. And I think when anyone hears a really compelling, clear vision, it's hard to not go, yeah, the world needs this. Like, the world needs it. So
exactly. And thank you so much, Iott, by the way. I really appreciate it for all the words. And I think one thing that just hit me was that basically when you're building a company, it's very important for your company to be multi-dimensional. Like, everyone shouldn't have the same expertise.
Yeah.
And I think basically when you're meeting different people, you shouldn't look for people that think like you. You should look for people that always try to challenge you, that whatever you say, they're not necessarily like in acceptance. And I think in that sense, it's kind of challenging to basically be able to resonate with those people because necessarily you're not agreeing on all the points all the time. And if you're not agreeing, it means that you need to have very good skills in handling those conversations. Uh, but at the same time, I think it helps your company and your family because, when you're building a company, it's really a family. You're bringing different people together. It has a mom, it has a dad, it has children, it has grandpa, grandma, I don't know. You see what I mean. So I think it's very important for you to communication, as Hossein said, for you to be able to have that communicational skills. In whatever job role you are, I think being able to speak well, clarity, as you said, and also being able to transfer the knowledge that you have, not just by, it's different when you say something than how you say it. Like,
Yeah.
those skills I think are very critical when, especially you're an early leader and you're learning as you go.
Yeah, and Craig, the other thing was like, like I said, I do dentistry day in, day out. I can do a crown prep in 5 minutes with my eyes closed. But when it came to like
Dangerous
the
man.
text, when it came to like tech stuff with with Masood, and as you know, we're working on DentMed platform here soon, and along the way, as we were like doing all these things, there was a lot of things that I'm like, Masood, what are you talking about? Let's just get to let's just get going. And Masood was like, dude, calm down. Like,
he's like, systems architecture, dude. Systems architecture.
Yeah. So there's just like a lot of the things that I didn't understand. So like we would sit down on this like long calls with like Hossein, Masood, and like we would go back and forth. But essentially, I didn't understand what it take. But like that's why I love this relationship I have with them, because they're just things that Masood is like, hey, Mila, like we have to slow down here. We got to take this necessary steps. So that's why, like Masood mentioned, like it's so amazing to have this different perspective when you're trying to build something, because then it just makes it it makes it work that much better, because then you're just getting that feedback and you're analyzing and you're understanding that, hey, you may have to slow down in some of this area and not really rush it. And that's how I got really confidence with what Masood and Hossein and Sina were talking about, because that's what they do, right? So it just essentially is like me being open to their feedback and taking their feedback and just really adjusting myself around what they were saying. And that's essentially, so far, it's been working amazing. So
love it.
Yeah, Mila, it's all teamwork. So getting the question back to you, Craig, when you are growing the company, you meet a different range of people. You meet people that are C players and they sometimes fail, or they mostly fail. And sometimes you meet very talented people. What do you do in each case? Like when you see people that are failing, or when you see people that are extremely talented and then you want to raise them to other positions as well. Like how do you handle that? You probably should have a lot of experience with that.
Oof, painful amount, actually. Like, I actually think a lot of businesses live and die on their inability to remove mediocrity out of their organization. Like, I'll just let that sit for a second. I think a lot of organizations live or die on their ability to remove mediocrity from their organization. And I would actually say mediocre people are a lot more dangerous than really poor performers, because when someone is really underperforming, you don't feel that bad, right? You're like, this person isn't even working. Like, they're not delivering anything. Like, it's unsustainable for them to be here. And maybe it's a challenging thing based on your relationship with conflict, but you at least acknowledge and know this person can't stay. Okay. Those C players, D players, C players, right around there, where they're just like, they just barely do enough to like make it to where it would be inconvenient to replace them, but they don't really do enough to excel, and they're not pushing themselves at all. They're not hungry, humble, and smart. They're just surviving in your organization. They're killing your organization. They will put a chokehold on your organization through apathy that you have no idea. And the cost of keeping mediocre players is extremely high. It's extremely high. And yeah, there are roles in companies where you probably have to redefine what those things are. But in general, The more mediocre people you have in an organization, the more likely it's gonna because they will get you through good times, but they will kill you in the bad times. So when things aren't going well and it's slow, and you have these people that can't rise to the occasion, that's going to kill your business.
If you feel comfortable, can you mention an example?
Yeah, I'll give someone's
Something
name.
you would.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you give an example of the name? But there you go.
Yeah. So for instance, I'll tell you about, let me think, most recent version of this. Okay. There's a dental practice with someone working at the office manager position that I know through one of the people I work with. I work with several consultants in the space too. So it's kind of cool. And this person did just a good enough job that the dentist did not want to let them go, but they had a bad attitude. And they would do kind of sketchy things, some not quite steal, but they were kind of like, they would give someone maybe extra vacation without asking, or maybe give someone a bonus without asking, like messing with cash flow. They weren't very proactive on getting back to voicemails. So it's like, yeah, they're closing enough cases, but they really weren't pushing to get to all the customers. So the attrition rate was slowly climbing. And before you knew it, the doctor, the associates, super frustrated, high tension work environment. The person I worked with, my client, the fractional COO for basically the organization, she was helping with operations. This person would create a tense relationship between the doctor and her. It would create challenges with the team because of gossip. And you're like, but this person does like a reasonably good job. They like do good enough, right? Like the business runs, he makes a decent amount of money. They finally were let go. And the dentist recently came to her and said, I am so sorry I took so long to do this. I kept this person for so long when I should have let them go. Everything is automatically better from them not being there and just having a new person that's just not creating all this tension. The whole organization is doing better. One mediocre person. Decent performer. Passable. Mediocre. Dangerous for your practice.
So you mentioned mediocre as very bad, like from a scale of 1 to 10, he's the 10.
No. So
for being bad.
I would say, no. So I would say a 10. So at a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, they're like a 5 or 6. They do just good enough to where you don't want to let them go because it's like, oh, like, I don't know, like they cause problems, but they still get their work done. And, it'd be a pain to rehire and I don't have to train someone, all this stuff. And so you just keep dragging them along. It's not the 10s that are the problem. You can go, that guy, that girl has to go right now. 10s are easy to identify. 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, easy to identify, right? You're just trying not to get sued and firing them. That's the only thing you're thinking about, right? That's it. It's the 5s. 5s and 6s are really dangerous because you just keep them. And then when you have hard times, they will drag you down.
You talk about it very painfully. It seems like
I've dealt with it a lot.
Quite an experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think right. I think I've worked with over 150 businesses at this point as a consultant. Dozens and dozens of times. Dozens. And I can't tell you how often leaders, especially on newer businesses or mid-sized businesses, maybe they don't have the grit to fire someone in a fairly critical role. That's a mediocre person. Because they don't want to go through the pain of dealing with it all. And man, I cannot tell you how many times, if you're watching this, just fire him right now. Just fire him, let him go. Don't question it. Snap your fingers, send the email, get off the podcast, send the email right now. Because every single time, here is the response. Wow, I wish I'd have done that sooner. Every time. 100% of the time, without fail, they wish they'd have done it sooner. Every freaking time. So yeah, I'm super passionate about it. If they're in your organization right now, you should be reevaluating why.
Okay, makes so much sense, especially with the strength that you put into it. But how do you identify those players, like mediocre players?
That's a good question.
What should you be looking for?
The person that's always trying to get out of things. That's a really good indicator. The person that's trying to do the least they can to stay. The person that's not going to do their job unless you're watching them. The person that isn't speaking well of you probably behind your back. The person that's spreading just a little bit of gossip poison into your organization. But they're an okay performer. No. You don't know the problems they're causing. You don't know. It's the small signs. Now, everyone can do any of those things at any moment. This is a perpetual thing with this person. That's how you know.
So basically, level of toxicity in that they bring to your company.
So that brings up a good point. When do you know if it's, so you've got some, A players, B players, and C players, and when do you know, like, how do you evaluate a person that's on the team, and you decide, are they in the wrong seat, or are they completely in the wrong bus? Maybe you see what I mean? You see so how do you determine that?
Do they carry the characteristics of the ideal team player, which we talked about last time? Hungry, humble, and smart.
Mm-hmm.
But their technical skill sets and motivation don't align with the role. Really easy. So are they hungry, humble, and smart? I can redefine them real quick. Hungry meaning they want more. They want to be better, not necessarily just raises or better positions, but they want to constantly develop, learn, like better themselves. Humble meaning they treat everyone at every level the same, or you could take them, and the person that is picking up the trash in front of their house, they're going to treat them with kindness and respect, right? There's no higher or lower role in society. And then 3, I'm doing the German 3 here. Smart meaning they have an intuitive intelligence around the position, or at least around your organization. Street smart toward business, toward whatever they're doing. So they need to have these 3 as a baseline. But then, if they have low motivation toward the role, or if they struggle with the technical ability of the role, probably in the wrong seat. Hopefully on the right bus. If they're a good team player, you probably can find a way to make it work. Right, Sina?
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find that, mute, unmute thingy over here.
I love it. It's like the scramble. I'm like balancing this on some books to raise it. And I'm like, try not to tip it over every single time. So I feel you. But yeah, Milad,
I am.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
On like every single thing that you just mentioned. And I had like a question for you.
Sure.
What do you do if you are failing at your role, or like you have a bad leader? You know what I'm talking about? Like when you when you have assigned to do something, and that is actually within your role, and you have a bad leader. So what do you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you have a bad leader. There's a really interesting concept called leading up, right? Where you kind of respectfully and with honor and humility let your leader know what it is you need from them in order to succeed. And a big part of that is also creating boundaries there. It's like, hey, I know maybe this isn't your favorite thing to deal with, oversee. I notice you're not very involved, or hey, you haven't given me a lot of instruction on this. I want to make sure that I can succeed at this, and right now I'm struggling without more of your input. How would you like to go about this? Do you want me to follow up with someone else? Do you want me to give me more time and learn on my own? Do you want me to go take a course? Like, what does it look like to you for us to get this to where it needs to be? Because without you, I'm not going to succeed. And I think the ability to lead up and force a bad leader, someone who's doing bad leadership, into a more successful role is really, really critical. And I think something that's really hard for a lot of people to admit is some people are like, this is a saying, I think it's painful and it's true. Most people are actually bad at most things. Like most people are not good at most things. We would like to think that we are, but we're not. And the moment you know that you're not is when you watch someone else who is good at it and you're like, oh yeah, I'm not very good at this. So most people aren't good at most things. And so unless you've really developed the skill at how to discover and enter into what you're good at, you're going to do things you're bad at. And one of the most important things is to not let down your company, yourself. Once again, building that self-confidence is to get yourself out of roles or positions where your primary duties are things you're bad at. There's nothing that can kill your confidence faster than doing things that you're not very naturally gifted at or don't have the strengths for. And so I think you have to exit those places. The idea of someone taking their weaknesses and shoring them up is the fastest way to mediocrity. Now, there is a base level of everything you probably should be able to do. Like you should be able to probably read stuff, right? You probably should be able to like talk to other human beings like a person. Is everyone gifted to be a professional public communicator? No. And if you're exceptionally poor at this and you're like, man, I want to get to a 5 out of 10, I'm just going to keep grinding and working at it, you're probably wasting your time and talents on something you could be moving from an 8 to a 10, which is way more valuable. So I think trying to move from poor to mediocre is a huge
That makes
waste.
a lot of sense.
Right? It's a huge
Definitely
waste.
Makes a lot of sense.
Your greatest value is moving from a 7 or an 8 where you're already really strong into a 9 or a 10, and then you're like changing the game in whatever you do. So I think that's where you focus is like, get out of there. Get out of things you're bad at and get into things you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
So something I was just going to mention there is, and I'm just thinking out loud, like, feel free to tell me you're absolutely...
This is a safe space.
Right. No, feel free to shut on me if you have to. I'm just saying. I think basically the leadership relationship that you have with the people that work with you is really not like a master-servant relationship. Like, you shouldn't necessarily just listen to your leader to what they say, because most of the times, as we talked about it, just, majority of the times the problems that happen in a company is because of the leader, not because of the employee. And then sometimes you have to be a leader to your leader for some areas that, you have more knowledge on. What are the areas they have more knowledge on? Like, that's a whole thing to talk about. Basically yourself at first. So when your leader tells you, go do this, you have to know yourself very well. Like, for instance, suppose I tell Milad, I want you to make me this platform. I want you to do it in Node.js by tomorrow. Milad is a dentist. He could say yes. He could be like, okay, I'm going to do it, and then start doing it, and then he's going to, ruin his confidence, be like, oh man, I can't do this. This is so hard. This is not for me. Or he could easily just say no, and he can do a leadership role to me and be like, Master, this is not my role. This is what I'm doing. I think it's very important for people, for basically the people that you hire, to have that sense of leadership, to be able to take charge of the things that they own and to know the areas that they are expert at. Like, correct me if wrong, but let me know your comments. Like, I think this is something very important to look in, basically to looking for people that you are trying to bring it onto the team.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I think the concept of ownership, of someone owning the success of something, means they should also be able to dictate. Like, one of my favorite quotes ever is, you define your yes by saying no. And so people have to have the ability to say no to make sure that something is successful, like critical. And if someone doesn't feel like they can do that with you, if they feel like they have to just say yes, then yeah, you're right. They're more of a servant than an employee. Like, an employee should be able to have a dialogue around what it is that must be done and how to do it well. And if this doesn't make sense, or if they're overloaded, or if there's too much going on or too little, or, hey, they should be able to go, hey, Masood, you're not giving me enough work. You're not challenging me enough work. Hey, like, I can do more complex things. Or, hey, dude, I don't know how to do this stuff yet. You keep giving me complex things and it comes back poorly and I'm not ready. Like, someone has to be able to have that conversation. So I agree 100%.
And I think there's so much power.
Crowns in 5 minutes, but
sorry, what was that?
Not everyone could just get in and prep a crown in 5 minutes. We're not all that talented.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
We got the best one in
Greg,
the US here.
One question. So we have actually talked about having a bad leader through our conversation. So what do you think? Who are the bad leaders within the dentistry? I mean dental industry that we are all in. So how do you define a bad leader?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think my first thought is that, and Dr. Milada, you'll have to contribute here a little bit. I think the most common problem of bad leaders in dental are physicians. This is not only exclusive to dentists, but I think this is a characteristic of physicians. Is your job is to be a primary operator, where you are hyper focused on your role, which is clinical and really important to not screw up. And you go through school, years and years of school, and you're truly an operator. You're excellent at executing, but not delegating. And I find probably in dental, the greatest volume of problems comes from the inability to delegate. Like, I'm doing my job, just you guys do your jobs, right? Hey, make this thing, you guys do that over there, you make it run. I need to do chair time. Chair time is how we make money. And that vacuum of leadership is what pulls into it all sorts of stupid problems. So I think that's probably the single most common problem on the clinical side of leadership in dental, is people are excellent operators, not excellent delegators. And once again, Dr. Milad, tell me I'm wrong. You know way more dentists than I do.
No, absolutely. I think throughout our conversation, even in past when we talked about it, I think the biggest thing is that, when we come out of dental school, we don't really know these things. We don't know how to, because even today I posted on LinkedIn, it's like we're in such a safe environment, right? We're surrounded by faculties, the students. So we have a big support system around us, and somebody is telling us what to do. Somebody is like delegating that task to us and saying, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I want you to do that. So when you come out into the real world and you start practicing, you don't know what to do because somebody always told you how to delegate things. So now it becomes very hard for us to say, oh, I need to delegate XYZ to that person. Like you mentioned, we are so focused on that chair side that we forget sometimes how to delegate things, how to really communicate well enough with the staff to say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. And that is the part that it becomes most challenging. I mean, for me, when I came out of school, I felt like at my very first job, I failed at it. I really, truly did, because I didn't know, even with my experience that I had, I still didn't know how to be a good leader. And it took time. It took time for me to be able to manage the patient, manage the staff, be able to manage complication, manage, to delegate things to people that I need to, and also not just jump into conclusion, give people enough time to prove that they are good enough to be in their role. And I always used to be like, I'm done with this person. I don't want to deal with it anymore, right? So like I had to do some learning to become a leader, but that takes time, right? That takes quite about a time. And I think that with timing and also with a little bit of a mentorship, that is stuff you can improve upon. But yeah, I absolutely agree, especially newer doctors that come out of dental school, medical school. I mean, today I was speaking to an endodontist that works with me, and he graduated recently, and he said, man, I'm running into the same things that I'm good at what I do, but when I run into some issue with the staff, I don't know what to do, because it's just that lack of not knowing. It definitely makes things so complicated. But I think with a little bit of a research and some time, that can get resolved. But yeah, at the beginning, you're going to make mistakes, and that's just a given. So,
Yep.
And I think it all goes back to the idea of basically lack of business knowledge, which we all talked about earlier on. And everyone knows that recently we did a survey. Craig, thank you so much for reposting it, and everyone else here. We got it to, it was our goal to get it to 50 responses. Shout out to Mila, he got it to 52 responses.
Milad.
Yeah, he's the man. If it's okay, I can just share the results here, and I think there's very good data there for
sure, let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, I found that survey super, super, like, that was so fascinating even for me to kind of see what the issues that we know exist, and just running that survey kind of like prove the point that there is some areas that we're definitely struggling more than any other. So,
absolutely,
for sure.
So I just go over the main points. Like there were a bunch of questions on there. I'm probably going to share the results publicly on LinkedIn as well. But basically, where can I see the full summary? Yeah, so these are the like variety of different people that answered the questions. Majority of them were recent graduates, just like Milot, that they had less than 5 years of basically practicing, and they usually have lack of business knowledge, as we just talked about. And there was a good variety of people that own a practice and people that are trying to buy a practice later on. So you can see like the first question that it asks on a scale of 1 to 5, how well did your dental school prepare you for the business aspect of dentistry? And you can see like half of people, they were like 1, they're like nothing. And like another 25, close to 25% said that, just a little bit. And maybe this was from the research that they did themselves, not from what the dental school taught them. Correct me if wrong, Milad here, but that was basically my understanding.
For sure.
And the areas that they felt least prepared for, the highest one was the legal and regulatory compliance. And that's probably something that Milad himself, like he was complaining a lot that he had no knowledge, and then he had to go to a lawyer and pay hefty amounts just to go over a simple contract, like, I don't know, like a 10-page contract. And that's something that, especially when like dental graduates come out of school and they want to go into a DSO or like become a part of another organization, they have no idea how these contracts work. So that's the area that they felt least prepared for. And then after that is financial management. So Milad, I actually had a question here. Do you know why it's financial management? Like, as someone that still doesn't own a practice, as someone that plans to own a practice later on, why is financial management the second biggest one?
The reason why is because a lot of time, for example, like when I got out of school, I mean, I did hours and hours of research on every contract that I got. But essentially, when you get the contract, like the wordings, essentially, like, are you getting paid daily guarantee? Are you getting paid based on production, collection? Are you getting paid on draw system? Understanding each of those, it's very, very crucial to how you're essentially going to get paid. And if you don't understand those, because nobody tells you, hey, like if you're working on production, whatever you produce, you're going to get paid. If you're working on collection, that means that if the office doesn't collect what you've done, you're not going to get paid. So, and the draw part is that you essentially, they pay you ahead, but if you don't make it the next month, they'll take that money back. So a lot of that financial understanding from a perspective of like the contract and the wordings, that's the area coming out of the school is just the challenging part of it is that.
Okay. So much sense. Yeah, the rest of it is just here. Yeah. Staff management and HR, of course, and purchasing a practice. That's another big one. And basically, everyone definitely believes that business skills are absolutely important when you are trying to go into the business of dentistry than just staying a dentist.
I like the troll at 1. They're like, nah. I love that. I want to meet them later. I think they're probably.
Yeah, we should probably bring this guy on the podcast.
He's like, I don't think it's important at all. I don't know why leadership matters. Love it.
That's a whole podcast by itself.
Yeah, that's good. It's powerful.
And it was interesting that majority of people, even with the all the lack of knowledge on the business side that we have, almost half of people have never sought mentorship, even though mentorship is probably one of the best ways, I would say, to learn about these stuff. So majority of people they don't know, and they are not on a path to know. You know what I mean? So
it's well said.
This data was also
just also to make a comment on that, I think the reason why a lot of people, especially in the field of dentistry, they may not go out and just really ask questions with the mentorship. I think that the biggest thing is that even I did that. Is like sometimes you feel like, man, I'm just afraid to say I don't know, right?
Or maybe you don't know who to go to, right?
Exactly. Or I was like, man, I don't know this, but I don't know who to reach out to, right? And you're like, oh man, I like, how many times am I gonna text the same person asking them different questions? Like, it's a Saturday night and I want to ask questions, but I can't because it's like you want to respect other people's time. So I think with this one is like one of those gray area where like, people are just like, I'm just gonna make the mistake and figure it out. But if they had a way of like being able to reach out to somebody, I promise you they would. Because if I had the option to reach out to somebody and not make the mistakes, I would definitely do that.
That's actually a very good point, Milad. And the next question exactly focuses on that. If yes, how did you find your mentor or advisor? And you can see majority of people, more than half of people, is from personal network or referrals. But how many people really have personal network or referrals? Like when you get out of dental school, like how many people do you know? You mostly know your professors and just, the people that were just the students that were around you. You don't know a lot of people in the industry that are doing a good job in mentorship. So that kind of tells you why, like these people, just simply because they don't know a good source, they rather just sit in their comfort zone and not ask and try to just learn it by failing.
Yep.
And yeah, so these were just some numbers. And yeah, as you can see, like people that sought mentorship, like they were kind of, I would say, not very much satisfied. Like 40% of them were very satisfied, but they were in the green area rather than, the red area to be not satisfied, I would say. And this is basically the same knowledge. So I'm going to share this publicly on LinkedIn for people to have access to, because I think it's basically shares very critical information about our industry. But yeah, I mean, it's great knowledge to have.
For sure.
Yeah, I found that data, like I found, when we did this survey and we would just keep getting people to like respond to it, I just found it so fascinating to see how people share such a common problem among in our industry, as far as like lack of business knowledge, lack of mentorship, and just like needing more. Just knowing that like I found that so fascinating that people can resonate when there's a problem, they can resonate with one another. And just knowing that, that's very exciting to see that, we at least have something in common in our industry when it comes to the problem that we know exists. So that was very interesting.
Absolutely. So, I mean, another amazing session. Thank you so much, Craig, for coming. Like, I learned a lot again this session. We're 20 minutes over time, but I didn't even notice. Like, I don't think anyone did.
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
I always think I think these are the things that I wish someone would have told me when I started to, and I think that's in the way that I approach what is it that I want other people to know. It's what I wish I would have known. And I think if we all do that, and if we're all chasing that, then the climb's a little less steep. So thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come on here with you all and talk through some of that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Especially this session I was very passionate about. Like I told Sina right before we jump on, I was like, wow, like look at the questions that he's put on. Like I'm super passionate about this.
Yes.
They're very good questions.
These are
that
amazing
I really want to know
questions.
personally.
Yeah. These are amazing questions, Craig. Your the door to this podcast is always open to you. Please come back, join us.
Definitely, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm sure.
Look at Hossein. You know what I'm saying? I just want to see him.
Yeah, man, he got that gray to the white. Yeah. Like it's just like crazy. You don't just have this bald head and that's it.
Yeah.
You never know. I don't know.
Hey, the only way I can fix that is all right, guys. Well, thank you so much, you all. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.